Hello Planet Internet, I'm Emperor Cole and this is Emperor Cole Film Review brought to you by MindBenderENT.com. And today I'm here to review Spider-Man No Way Home, written by Eric Summers and Chris McKenna, directed by John Watts. If you haven't seen this movie yet, you definitely want to check it out because this is going to be a full spoiler review. For everyone else, let's get ready to have Doctor Strange cast that spell and let's hope they don't forget who we are and let's get ready for this multiverse. Let's do it! Spider-Man No Way Home, this is my most anticipated film of 2021, and this movie has some great expectations behind it because of so much of the hype and build-up that was around it. And I must say that it did not disappoint at all. This film was supposed to be the end of Peter Parker / Spider-Man as we know him, as far as what the character's been so far, and it was also supposed to be the lead into Doctor Strange The Multiverse of Madness, and I must say this movie definitely delivered on both of those two items. I will say this is the most emotional Spider-Man movie that's ever been made, and I love the fact that Marvel stayed true to the characterization of Peter Parker in regards to him always having to endure tremendous loss in his personal life as Peter Parker because of him choosing to be Spider-Man. With the death of Aunt May, that was something that I did not see coming at all, especially with how it happened because of the Green Goblin. Everyone in the movie theater that I was in was completely shaken. There was some people who started crying and everybody was just very heartbroken for Peter in that particular moment. The death of the character Aunt May carries so much more weight and feeling and emotion to it because this character is present in all the Spider-Man films that Marvel has created. So they definitely did a good job at building her up and having her around so that you can actually see her. She interacts with Peter in several scenes, so she's more fleshed out as a character. She feels more like a real person, like a woman who's an aunt who's helping to raise her nephew in Queens, obviously. And they did a good job of even presenting her as more of a person and giving her a love interest, giving her Happy Hogan as her love interest. So of course when her death actually happens, it hits so much harder. And even in that moment where she tells Peter, hey, you did the right thing. We did the right thing. You have a gift. You're trying to help people. One thing I had a little bit of an issue with, one particular plot point, is given the fact that Peter was so naive, and when Doctor Strange told him that they had to send them back to their own particular universes that they were from, and Peter didn't want to do it because he didn't want to send them back to die because he knew they were fighting again. They were basically in battles against different versions of him, and they were going to die in those fights. And I feel like at this point, Peter had fought with Doctor Strange in Infinity War. He fought alongside him also in Endgame. So I feel like he should have trusted Doctor Strange a little bit more and took his word for it. It's like they saved the world from Thanos and the Black Order and, you know, the snap and all that stuff. So it's like if Doctor Strange tells you that, hey, this deals with the multiverse, which we know a whole lot of nothing about. We know very little about the multiverse. This could have catastrophic results or a catastrophic impact on the whole entire universe. Why wouldn't he just listen to him? You know, why would he be so naive and be so foolish to think that he could actually try to save these villains? And after all, they were in fights against different versions of him. They are the bad guys. They're not the good guys. So it's like, why couldn't he just accept that? Also, he's been a superhero for a while now. He knows that people do die in this particular game of being a superhero versus villains. He lost Tony Stark, so he knows that sometimes sacrifices have to be made. Sometimes you lose people. So, and given the fact that they are the bad guys and they're fighting against different versions of him, why couldn't he just accept that they were going to die, you know? Obviously, it's a plot point, and I know it's something that had to happen for the movie to take place and for the things to happen. But ultimately, in the end, it was Peter's own foolishness that caused him to lose Aunt May. It was also his own foolishness that caused him to end up in this position where he is now basically lost his identity. He's not Peter Parker as the world knows him. The theater went absolutely crazy when the portal opened and Spider-Man comes through, the actual portal that Ned made. And of course, Spider-Man comes through when everybody's thinking it's Tom Holland. And when he takes off the mask, it's Andrew Garfield. There were cheers and applause and everyone was happy. Big smiles all over the place. This was a great scene and it was an excellent moment. Andrew Garfield did a very good job at reprising his role of Spider-Man, and the back and forth and the banter that he had in that moment with MJ when she's telling him, you know, touch the ceiling, see if you can crawl on the wall. And then Ned's grandmother comes over and wants him to clean the cobweb out. That was really funny, and I enjoyed that humor. Love that scene. Very, very good, very entertaining. And when the second portal opened, the theater went absolutely batshit crazy. Why? Because Tobey Maguire stepped out, and his version of Spider-Man is the Spider-Man that most people originally remember seeing back in the original film back in 2000. He is the one who had 3 films, and he's the Spider-Man that most people grew up with. So everyone's going crazy, people are cheering and applauding, and it was a moment of pure nostalgia. I think he and Andrew Garfield did an excellent job of reprising their roles as Spider-Man / Peter Parker in this particular film. And this is the first time in movie history where I believe 3 different people who played the same exact character all starred in one film together, actually playing that same particular character. And they did a great job, and they did a good job of sharing the screen together. There's no one trying to take over the show or anyone trying to one-up the other in particular scenes. They all did great jobs, and they all had particular scenes that stood out very well and just very, very much so highlighted their version of Peter Parker and showed what was a little different and what was more unique about them. The scene where Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is able to save MJ when she falls from the Statue of Liberty, the scaffolding, was intense. Given the fact that Aunt May had died earlier in the film, I wasn't 100% sure if they were going to let her live. So everyone like let out a sigh, a collective sigh of relief when he was actually able to save her. And I thought this was a dope moment at redemption for the Amazing Spider-Man, since he wasn't able to save Gwen Stacy in his second film when she fell from the clock tower and hit her head against the ground, like right at the last moment. So everybody was very happy, very relieved, and it was a very emotional moment. I was really happy for him. Where you see like the emotion on his face where he almost looks like he's about to cry, and he looks like he needs a moment. And he asks MJ, "Are you okay?" And she kind of says to him, "Are you okay?" You know, that was a heartfelt moment, and it was dope. I actually absolutely loved it. One of my favorite scenes in the movie was after the 2 Spider-Men show up in Ned's grandmother's house, and they're trying to figure out where Peter went, and they actually find him on top of the school roof. And the 2 other Spider-Men, of course, played by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, they show up with MJ and Ned, and they embrace in this moment, and he lets them know, you know, he lost Aunt May. And then, like, Peter gets upset with him. He tries to say, "Hey, guys, you guys are going to have to go home. You don't know what I'm going through." And Tobey Maguire tells him, like, of course, he tells him his version of Spider-Man. He says, "For me, it was my Uncle Ben. And, you know, I lost him, and it was my fault." And he says, "The guy who did it, the guy was responsible. I just wanted him dead." And he said, "I got that, but you know, it didn't change anything. It didn't change anything with me. I was still going through it emotionally. I was still hurting. It didn't help at all." And then when you get the darker Andrew Garfield, where he says, you know, he lost, for him, it was the loss of Gwen Stacy. That was his girl. He says, "She was my MJ." And he said after he lost her, you know, he just went in a dark place. And this is where he got more aggressive, and he stopped pulling his punches when it came to the villains and dealing with the bad guys. So you can tell that he went down a darker path and started actually killing some of the bad guys. And they try to let Peter know, you know, you don't want to go down that road. But I absolutely love this scene because it showed this was their moment of connection, where it showed what they really had in common. It showed that they all took tremendous loss being Peter Parker and being Spider-Man. Also for me, this was also a parallel moment in the film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is also done by Sony. And in that particular scene where, of course, it's an animated film though, where you have all the different versions of Spider-Man that are talking to each other, and every one of them is telling what happened to them, who they lost, and who they lost that was close to them. And that scene happened in, I believe, in Miles Morales' bedroom after the loss of his uncle. I can't remember the name right at this moment, but the uncle who was also Prowler, after he died and, you know, got shot by Kingpin on top of the roof. So these was very emotional scenes. One of my favorite scenes in the whole entire film. Another scene that I enjoyed a lot was when they're at the Statue of Liberty and they're waiting for the villains to show up, and they have this casual conversation about the web shooters, and Tobey Maguire tells him that his webs just come out of his wrists. He doesn't have any web shooter or anything like that. Obviously, that was something that fans complained about around the time period when his movies were actually out. People said, oh, it wasn't comic book accurate to the character. And of course, Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield said, oh man, that must be so much easier and so much more convenient, because we have to mix different chemicals together to create our webs and have to have the web shooters. Andrew Garfield said, yeah, he says, a couple of times I run out, and you know, things can get rough if you run out of webs when you need to use them. So I thought that was something that was really cool. Obviously, if you ever met different versions of yourself, you want to know what was different. You'd speak and want to have some of those type of conversations. So I thought it was really interesting that they included that in the actual film. Also, the part later on when they're actually having the battle and they're trying to coordinate themselves, and Tom Holland, his Peter Parker, he says to them, you know, I was in the Avengers, we fought in space, And he's trying to get them more organized to be able to take down the villains, because of course they're used to being on their own. They're used to fighting by themselves. And when he mentions the Avengers, Tobey Maguire says, "Oh man, that's really cool. What's an Avenger?" And then Andrew Garfield says, "Oh, Avengers, you're in a band or something?" I thought that was really dope, and that was kind of a little bit of a play on what Mark Ruffalo said in Avengers Infinity War when he found out the Avengers broke up. And he says, like a band, Tony? So I kind of connected the dots on that one. I thought that was something that was really dope. Another part of the movie that I enjoyed was when Doctor Strange showed up to the Statue of Liberty. He walks through the actual portal, and he's got the spell box with him, and he runs into Tom Holland's Peter Parker. And of course, he tries to tell him, wait, Doctor Strange. He says, things are working. It's going according to plan. And he says, he has to introduce the other two Spider-Men. And he says, this is Peter Parker. This is Peter Parker. He says, they're me from other universes. I thought that was really cool, and it was pretty funny the way he actually had to do it. Also, I like the fact in the fight that they had in the mirror universe, I like that Peter was able to use math and geometry, and he was able to beat Doctor Strange and able to get him webbed up and stuck so that he couldn't get out. That showed that Peter's able to hold his own. He's really intelligent, and he's able to think on his feet in the middle of a battle. Obviously, with the way the movie ends and the fact that he's going to be on his own in whatever movie comes next or what have you, they kind of illustrated what Spider-Man is going to be when it's just him on his own. The villains in this movie, they're all solid, and they all played their parts pretty well, but I will say Doc Ock and Green Goblin were the real standouts for me. And of course, Green Goblin stole the show at pretty much the end of the movie. Just with the fact that he actually killed Aunt May. Then he bombed Doctor Strange and released the spell that he kept contained in that actual that spell box or whatever. Then later on, after Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker saves him from being impaled by Tom Holland, because of course he's upset over Aunt May, he stabs him in the back. So the fight at the end between Green Goblin and Tom Holland's Spider-Man was a very brutal and physical fight. It was a callback to the actual fight that took place between Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Green Goblin in that first film. This fight was very brutal, very physical, and you've never seen Tom Holland's Spider-Man fight like that with that much emotion and that much anger. So also, I went on YouTube and took a look at the first Spider-Man, that in-fight scene between him and Green Goblin. And that fight was like the type of a fight scene that happens in an R-rated film. So I was kind of surprised, like wow, when I initially watched that movie way back in 2000, 2001, I didn't remember that fight being that brutal or being that much of a just a hard body brawl. So seeing it again all these years later, I was like, man, that was really a scrap right there. So I like the fact that they did that callback and had Tom Holland really going for it like that in that fight against him. And I like the fact that they had Tobey Maguire come and stop him right at the last minute when he was getting ready to impale him with his own glider. So it was just going to be a different version of the same thing happening. But I like the fact that he actually stopped him. And of course, they showed that Green Goblin was all the way 100% with the shits when he stabbed him in the back after the guy just stopped him from getting killed. So I like the fact that they made the villain really villainous. The CGI with the production sets in this film are top-notch, like top of the line, as good as it gets. And what I mean by that is they made this movie look very much like it was actually filmed in New York. And maybe some scenes might have been, but I highly doubt it. For example, the scene when Doc Ock shows up on the highway and he attacks Peter when Peter's trying to speak to the admissions woman from, I believe, MIT. And he's trying to convince her to give Ned and MJ a chance and to try to let them get into school. That particular part of the highway right there, I believe on 95 South, I've ridden past this part because it goes into Manhattan. I've driven past that part at least thousands of times because I've been living in New York City for the last 15, 16 years. So I've been past it literally thousands of times, and that looked just like that particular area. It looked very realistic. Looked, like I said, I was thinking to myself, man, they must have shut the highway down for like 2 or 3 days to shoot these scenes, right? Later on, I saw some behind the scenes work, and they were actually on a sound stage that's all blue screen / green screen behind them. Those were all computer generated graphics to make it look like they were actually there. So great job by the actual computer generated graphics people and all the special effects and visual effects that were done with the film. Hell of a job right there. One question I had at the end of the movie was, since all the villains were basically cured by all the different Spider-Men, when they go back home to their own universes, Are those effects still going to last, or are they going to revert right back to the same character that they were before they were pulled into this different universe? Good question, right? And yeah, I can't really answer that one. I'm not 100% sure, because it's like they weren't supposed to come to this universe. It was something that just happened. So when they go back home, will they suddenly be this different person who's changed? Now they're no longer a villain? Or are they going to go right back to the instant where they were at and be right back at the same particular point in time? If so, wouldn't that make everything that Tom Holland's Peter Parker / Spider-Man, everything he sacrificed and went through, wouldn't it make it all for nothing? The Charlie Cox cameo as Daredevil, when he's speaking with when he's speaking with Peter and Aunt May and Happy, and of course he's the lawyer and he catches the brick. That scene was really cool. I like the fact that they brought him into the MCU now officially, and obviously since he's in a different universe, this is a different version of the character. This is not 100% the same as that character from the Netflix universe. And I think this is the beauty of the actual multiverse, because you can still get different characters. You can get characters that are familiar but different, and that's the explanation for certain events that happen in the Netflix series. They didn't play out in this particular universe, so that stops everybody from asking the question, well, what about this person? What about that person? What about Kingpin? And of course, they're all different. So, of course, Kingpin was introduced in the Hawkeye series. That's a whole nother thing, but this is a different version of that character. So at the end of the movie, when Peter has Doctor Strange recast the spell, but he tells him, this time I want everyone to completely forget about Peter Parker altogether. It's heartbreaking because you know he's about to completely lose everything altogether. No one's going to know who he is at all. That means no Stark Tech, no more Avengers, no more anything. He'd be 100% just a nobody in the world, which is great for his secret identity where he can still be Spider-Man, but at the same time, for the rest of his life, it completely just ruins everything. So no MJ, no Ned, no friends, no nothing, you know? Obviously, no Aunt May, she's dead anyway, but the fact that he's having Doctor Strange cast his spell and he knows that he's completely sacrificing his personal life and even his profession, even his life as a superhero, he's still gonna have it, but it's gonna be completely different. It was almost like this was his moment of clarity. It was a moment of maturity for him where he realized that no matter what, he was never going to be able to protect his friends all the time. So in order to keep them safe, he wanted to be able to keep them away from him and completely disassociate himself and his life away from them. It was a sad moment, but at the same time, from a business standpoint, from Sony's point of view, it was also a stroke of genius. Why? Because they just reset the Sony Spider-Man universe right in front of everybody's eyes. And if the deal between them and Disney, if they decide they're not going to go forward with it or that they're just going to let it go, now it makes sense as to how you can still have Tom Holland and have him as Spider-Man with everything we know, everything's been built up, but it explains why no one knows who he is, why he's no longer connected to the Avengers, and why he can be in his own universe with new characters and new things happening. Since Doctor Strange was able to cast a spell at the end of the movie that would make everybody forget about Peter Parker, why wouldn't he just suggest to him, hey, how about I cast a spell that makes everybody forget Quentin Beck and everything that he ever said or anything related to him? Wouldn't that have completely just made everything so much easier for Peter? That would have prevented everybody from knowing his secret identity. Like, even if Doctor Strange didn't suggest that, why couldn't Peter have come up with that with himself, you know? Now, obviously, if that's done and it works properly, then the Spider-Man No Way Home movie doesn't happen at all. And of course, there's no point of it, but just something to think about, something to throw out there. This is my favorite Spider-Man film ever made. I love the fact that this movie is very entertaining. It has so much emotion and heart, great action. And I love the fact that they used the multiverse and they did it in such a way where it was very understandable. It wasn't convoluted, it made sense. Also, the fact that they were able to pull it off in a live action film, absolutely phenomenal, because this is something I never thought any studio would ever do. To be able to show multiple actors who all play the same character, have them in one film, have it make sense, and have it not be corny. Top of the line, great job by Sony and Marvel. I've seen this movie in theaters 2 times already, and I'm debating if I'm going to see it a 3rd time before it's done with its theatrical run. I think I will, just because I want the experience one more time of just seeing everything. And it's a great film. I enjoyed it a whole lot. Time for me to give Spider-Man No Way Home a score on the MindBender movie meter. And I'm going to have to go with a score of 94%. 94% for Spider-Man No Way Home. I absolutely enjoyed this film. Okay, so this has been Emperor Cole Film Review for Spider-Man No Way Home. If you enjoyed this review, definitely make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at MindBenderENT. Follow us on Facebook at MindBender Entertainment. And make sure you follow us on Instagram at MindBender Entertainment as well. And of course, check out our website, mindbenderent.com. Check us out on YouTube for more movie reviews, top 10 lists, short films, and things of that nature. And of course, remember, the future is now.